Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to GarbAugust, the BookTube event that, if it does not end all other BookTube events, certainly embarrasses all other BookTube events. This was created by Ollie at Criminali. He assembled a baker's dozen of disreputable, deplorable co-hosts to celebrate trash for the month of August, to celebrate the reading of garbage for the month of August. And it's been a blast. An absolute blast. Not only reading, I have kept a steady diet of garbage in my reading buffet for the whole of my life. Partially because I think I've always sort of understood the particular kind of pleasure that can come from reading well done trash. It will seem like a contradiction in terms to those of you who've never experienced, but I assure you it does exist. Not only that, but also I've kept up a steady diet of trash for the whole of my reading life because I viciously hate snobbery. I hate condescension, especially literary condescension. Cannot stand it. And trash feels like, cocking a snoot to all. It feels like thumbing your nose at literary snobs, at the literary connoisseurs, which you might think might not sit well with the fact that I myself am a book critic, and there is an implied tension between book critics and readers and fans of garbage that has so far not erupted in GarbAugust, but I still feel like it deserves a video. I haven't made that yet. I've made a few conceptual trash-talking videos, but today I have a book to talk about. Today is just a trash pile because I am continuing on. Quite a few of my GarbAugust co-hosts are bidding fond, weepy-eyed farewells to GarbAugust, but I guess because a lot of them probably have jobs and commitments and loved ones and hygiene and pants and whatnot, so they're not smashing down the garbage books, and a lot of them probably pre-filmed their videos. So they're making these videos because they know that August is almost over. It doesn't feel like August is almost over. It's boiling hot, almost triple digits in Boston today, with 97% humidity, blaring sunlight. So it feels like high summer. But quite a few of my co-hosts have been making videos sort of bidding a fond farewell to GarbAugust in 2022, which was, I think, by anyone's measure, a success. We've had two back-to-back success BookTube events in a row. First, June on the Range, and then GarbAugust. That's wonderful. Bring them on. More such events, absolutely. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say goodbye to GarbAugust until August is over. So I'm going to just keep reading and making videos. And today's book is this. It's Come Die With Me by James Dark. This is a Mark Hood thriller. He is an operative for an Interpol-like organization called Intertrust. I think this is the first Mark Hood book, his first adventure. This is just an old ratty paperback that I found at the Brattle. Back in May when GarbAugust was a twinkle in Criminali's eye. And I had never heard of it before. I'm pretty sure that James Dark is a pseudonym. But I don't know the backstory of these things the way Ollie seems to have it at his fingertips, and I don't know that. This is from the 1960s, if I remember correctly. 1965. Oh, wait, was there a copyright? Horwitz Publications in Sydney, Australia. I thought for a minute I spotted the original author's name. I don't think the original author's name is James Dark. I think that was a house name. But this is well, in the course of GarbAugust, we have talked about what makes good garbage and bad garbage, right? It's not like anybody at GarbAugust has been saying that anything that's trash must be good. There's quite a bit of it that isn't. There's quite a bit of it there's quite a bit of it that is garbage, but is still really, really enjoyable. And then there's garbage that is clearly garbage. It's got shifters, or it's 85 in a series, or it's obsessed with guns or whatnot, but it's not good. For instance, one of my co-hosts, It Came From the Page, encountered a couple of those things, led him, when he did a video on what he learned from GarbAugust, it led him to actually lay down the law. But as far as he's concerned, the subgroup of garbage called men's adventure novels are all garbage. Worst kind. Really bad garbage, not the good kind. And I heard that and thought, well, that seems a little sweeping, but then I was trying to think of an example of so-called men's fiction that isn't not just trash, but bad trash, unsavory trash. And I was hard pressed to come up with even a few of those. Because the examples that come first to mind, I don't think are trash, right? I mean, someone might say, uh, readers of a certain age would say Tom Clancy, and that is garbage. But we've never got to Clancy in GarbAugust 2023. I meant to, but I never did. But lots of others would say, oh, books for men. Oh, that would be John le Carré. John le Carré is a very good writer. He's not trash by any measure whatsoever, and there's a discussion to be had about Ian Fleming about the Bond books. I wish that my GarbAugust co-host had been more able, more available for live discussions, because I would love to poll the room about James Bond novels. You might say that, but I think it came with the page. It came from the page is probably right. Certainly this would count as men's fiction. I don't think that this book was ever intended for a woman to read it. I admit I love the cover. The cover is very evocative. You have a man, an agent. Obviously, it's going to be Mark Hood. He is just outside the door of a room. There's a ceiling fan. There's a woman tied on the bed. She's naked, and a man in dark glasses is hovering over her. And he seems to have a cap and a tie like he might be a law enforcement officer. And the cover has an atmosphere to it. I like how the center of the story of the painting is in the distance. We've got all this foreground, so that your eye sort of moves in to the drama. I think it probably centers on him first, then on her, then on, oh wait, this means something. This scene means something. I like the artwork. And in this story, a German man, a bald, suave, smooth-talking German man named Gauss, has stolen some submarines and some low-grade nuclear weapons. And his goals are not clear. The novel takes its time. It follows a lot of the thefts of the original boats and whatnot, and pieces them together so that neither Mark Hood nor Intertrust really knows what's going on. They don't really know what Gauss is doing. And in those early pages, I was thinking, oh, well, smooth-talking German named Gauss is stealing military equipment. Oh, don't tell me, let me guess. You want to bring back the Third Reich. You want to make a Fourth Reich with yourself as the Fuhrer. And I laughed. I thought, even in 1965, that is just so dumb. That is just so predictable. That is certainly not the case. No matter what else happens, that is certainly... It'll be some twist. There'll be a twist to it. And then halfway through the book, Mark Hood is captured by Gauss's henchmen rather easily. It's weird, this guy. He goes from being Superman to being Inspector Clouseau on the same page. He's captured and he's handcuffed, and he is in a room, and Gauss is steepling his fingers and stroking his chin and talking to Mr. Hood. And he leans forward, and he starts Marvel's studio villain style to start telling Hood his grand plan. And I'm thinking, all right, well, here we go. Here I'll find out what James Dark is going to add as a twist to the story, and then Gauss talks about how he's going to revive the Third Reich with himself as Hitler. I thought, oh, come on. And to his credit, Mark Hood sneers a little at him, but not enough. But I came across the scene that is actually depicted on the cover. I wanted to read you a bit so that you know what you've got. The woman in the cover is named Prue, and she is a sort of a tough-talking love interest, quasi-love interest for Mark Hood, who is captured by a man named Peter. His name is Peter Page? Yes, Peter Page, who is a sort of a rival operative who doesn't know that Mark Hood is involved, doesn't know that Mark Hood is in the Bahamas, doesn't know that Mark Hood is going to come walking through the door. And when Mark Hood does, he pulls a gun on him. And Hood thinks that he didn't count on having a gun pulled on him. He's across the room. There's nothing even he can do. So he sort of bluffs his way out, tells Prue to leave the room. And Page is telling him, she's not going anywhere. I'm in charge here. You're not telling anybody to do anything. But he just insists. So she does. And when he's distracted, Hood strikes. Prue moved toward him. Casually, Hood stepped back aside to let her pass. Then his big body bent backward in a phenomenally rapid movement with his left leg shot up, and the shoe landed in a vicious savate kick against Page's wrist. The gun spun through the air and fell with a soft thud on the carpet. "Don't move, Peter," Hood said. Shocked by the suddenness of the attack, Page had not tried to move, except to massage his wrist. His face was a grimace of pain. "You bastard, Hood," he said shakily. Hood looked at him speculatively. Page's position was plain to him. The four powers of Intertrust united in protecting their nuclear capability, but they were not averse to carrying on their own merry little game of espionage, especially when it concerned a vitally valuable guidance system. Page's employers would pay a kingly price to get hold of that, but he had to make sure that he was right. Hood heard the door click shut behind him. "The guidance system, Peter," he said, his voice low. Was that what you were after?" Understanding shone through the pain in Page's eyes. The shock of it halted his massaging. "You?" he whispered. "One of us?" Hood smiled bleakly. "Not quite, I hope. I wouldn't have stacked on an amateur's turn like this. Your boys must be mighty short of help." "Is that so?" Page snapped. "I've turned in some—" He recovered himself. "Go on, Peter." Page took a step forward, one hand out. "Look, Mark, you're after that boat too, one of Gauss's stolen boats. We can make a deal on this." "A deal?" Hood moved his head sideways, frowning worriedly. "No." He started pacing the floor slowly between Page and the gun. It had not been there with Siboney. The gun had not been there, and the temptation and the sorrow had not been there with Siboney, who's a gigantic man that just a few pages earlier Hood has fought and incapacitated and killed. It had not been there earlier with Siboney. That was simple self-preservation, but now the sickness coiled in his guts. Yet the thing had to be done. He passed Page, who followed him with his eyes, trying to read the indecision on Hood's frown. "You know me now, you see," Hood said, turning to come back. "My cover's blown." Page's eyes glinted. "So's mine. So what? You think I'd talk?" "Yes, Peter," Hood said, and they were the last words Page heard. Level with his neck, the hand struck out like a snake. It was the same blow delivered by Lot against Teuton in the wardroom, but this time there was no restraint. Page flung sideways onto the bed and slid down its edge with his eyes shut and his mouth agape. The dull redness of a massive contusion began to spread over the side of his neck. Hood barely looked at him. His face was a mask as he crossed and took up the gun, dropping it into his hip pocket. Then he opened the bedroom door sufficiently for him to emerge and shut it behind him. Prue pushed herself out of a chair. She started to come to him, and then she halted. "My God," she said, "your face." Hood cursed silently and pointlessly, but he had known Page. "It's never easy," he said, "like that." Her eyes were round, unblinking, the horror naked. "Mark." He nodded. I had to, you see. His face and voice were back to normal. He spoke reasonably, as if explaining, she thought with bemused wonder, a tactic in cricket. He not only knew me, he knew what I was. If I hadn't, he smiled patiently, I would have to turn in my badge if we had badges. You see that, surely? Hood walked to an occasional table and with steady hands poured himself half a glass of scotch. And Prue, earlier excited by the intrigue she was party to, now confronted nakedly with its real horror, thought what a frightful life this calm, genial man must lead. "My God," she said involuntarily, "how can you do it?" Hood turned the glass almost empty. "How does a surgeon work? Or a garbage collector? You can't think of the blood or the dirt." Prue shook her head bewilderedly. "But in cold blood, deliberately." The glass slapped on the table. Hood said viciously, "Do you think I like it?" She came to him then, quite naturally, close against him, and her hands smoothed across his forehead and down his cheeks. Then her eyes spoke before they closed, and his mouth was on hers, harder as she pressed back. Women can be excited by different things. Alcohol, of course, but danger, even violence, can sometimes produce passion. But Hood was not thinking of motives at all. The whole gamut of his intelligence concentrated into a simple and galvanic feeling. And it goes on from there. And that is bad. Right? That is very bad. The scene is poorly realized. Whoever wrote it barely took any time to look at it at all. The dramatic potential of what's going on, you can easily see that potential, but it's not there. It's not realized on the page. And What is that business? I mean, Prue has been in adventures of her own. She's a professional woman. She's a colleague of his almost. But when she learns that he just killed someone in cold blood, she's aroused. That is what it came from the page meant. That's part of what he meant by men's adventure fiction being bad, not just trash, but bad trash, and with no excuse. There isn't. It's fashionable to think of cultural excuses, the whatnot. That is not excused by that, and that just gets worse as the book goes on. Prue is not the only woman. There's another female character in this story, and both of them are basically that. They're both basically barnyard animals. They basically they are there to be in awe of how stark and manly the men are, and really to surrender their identity the minute that awareness takes over their senses and makes them into the sensual healers that nature intended them to be. And that was, take my word for it, dated and tin-eared even in the 1960s. And the same thing is true with the racism that's all throughout this book. Siboney, the big man that Mark Hood fights and kills in an earlier scene, the one that's referenced in what I just read you, is a big black bartender at a strip club in Nassau, in the Bahamas. And he is constantly referred to by the narrative, not by Hood, as the Negro. Constantly. Now, that was a term that was in use, but not as a substitute for a human being, not to refer to someone, not in normal adult fiction that wasn't itself openly intending to incite racism. That would have struck, I didn't read this when it first came out, but that would have struck a decidedly discordant note even at the time. And that's to say nothing of the fact that at that nightclub, when Mark Hood wants an extra drink, he is positively stewed to the gills throughout most of this book. He wouldn't be able to savate kick anything. Half a glass of scotch in 1 second is what we just saw him drink. That is par for the course, except when he's actually in captivity. That's par for the course. And when he's in captivity, he's always talking about how his life isn't worth a plug nickel to Gauss and his henchmen, but what would really kill him would be the DTs. but when he's in that club and he wants a drink, he orders around the waitstaff to get him one and calls them boy. That wasn't flying in 1965 either. I know we were having race riots, but that is just the wrong kind of trash. That is a bad kind of trash. This book has, I guess, a kind of kinetic energy to it, but the main villain, the main plot, the main resolution, it's all not only completely predictable, but completely ridiculous. It's the very first thing that you would think of. Everything that happens in this book is the very first thing you would think of, without ever rethinking it. So we hit a bit of a bumpy spot for GarbAugust as the event winds down. I'm hoping for better tonight when I figure out what I'm going to read tonight to talk to you about tomorrow. So come die with me. Not a recommend. Don't think it's ever going to be in print again. I don't think you're ever going to have a chance to read it unless you find it like I did at a secondhand shop. But I don't recommend it. So neither of us do. Right? It doesn't get our seal of approval. Maybe GarbAugust will be nicer to me tomorrow. We shall see. Thank you, BookTube.